Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Millen Sharma Show. I'm your host, Millen, and today our guest is Doug Crowe, who is an investor, brand specialist, and accomplished writer to the Chicago Tribune, Daily Herald, MSM Money, Yahoo Finance, and the Seattle Times. He's authored several #1 best-selling books, and he's been featured in Bloomberg, CBS News, and the Daily Cafe. He created the Real Estate Coach on ABC Radio in Chicago years back, and he wrote a Kindle book, Seven Secrets of Broadcast Excellence. He's produced and published best-selling books while marketing on the largest infomercial network in the country, or producing blockbuster Hollywood movies. And if that's not enough, he's an avid scuba diver, instrument-rated private pilot,
Yes.
photographer, magician, which that sounds really fun. That's interesting.
That's
And and father of 3. So welcome to the show, Doug Crowe. It's great to have you on here.
Thank you so much, Milan. Great to be here.
Before we go forward,
Yeah.
it's pronounced Millen, just for
Milan, excuse me. I'm sorry. Milan sounds sexier. I think you should change it, but I'll go with Milan.
All right. Cool. So just real quick, pretty much the top things about you is an investor, brand specialist.
Mhm.
I saw that you pretty much launched the organization called Author Your Brand,
Yes.
which basically, from what I saw, it aims to organize and author and publish crafted books for CEOs and entrepreneurs.
Correct.
So I honestly thought, I never really heard of this. This is pretty unique to me. So I'm just curious, how did you really come up with this idea of doing this for people and young entrepreneurs? That, like, how can books really help them propel? Like, what is this need that really people needed? Because
Well,
a lot of people want it.
There's a need, then there's a story. Which you want to hear?
Story first. Story
First. Okay, so the story, it goes back. There's a couple of layers to it, which might be interesting to your listeners. We'll see. But I got involved in. I used to be 20 years as a real estate investor and radio host, whatnot. And after the big crash, I'm a boohoo phase. 19 foreclosures, bankruptcy, divorce, depression. It was just a mess, right? 2008 was not kind to a lot of people. But in that muck of depression and whatnot, during my little boohoo phase, I wrote a book, and the book sucked, right? It was just awful. So I went back to some of the people I had the radio. I had on some people we may know, like Robert Kiyosaki, Laurel Langmeyer, some people that are pretty famous. And so, how'd you guys do this book thing? And they said, well, we don't write. We're authors, but we're not writers. Writers takes a lot of time. So we had ghostwriters. And so the more I started investigating the ghostwriting world, I realized there's lots of different methods to capturing a person's voice, their personality, their style, their pacing, the way they want to communicate, and capturing it and putting it into a book. So we developed a very unique system. We've got a journalist, ghostwriter, editor, and proofer that work in conjunction with the author, because they are an author, it's their words, but they don't have to write. They just talk to journalists and communicate things. And the good journalists, they ask questions that writers don't ask themselves. And that's the reason when I look at a few times I've written books and they're okay. But when a journalist interviews me, he's going to ask questions that the reader wants to know. So it's a much deeper, more broad-based conversation, which makes it for a better book. So we use a ghostwriting, we create our own ghostwriting system, and I've got a couple of journalists and a little over half a dozen ghostwriters, a couple of editors and proofers to package up books for our clients.
Yeah. Okay. Because I saw that you shared it. You had the honor to share the stage with Robert Kiyosaki and obviously Bill Walsh, several other people.
Yeah.
What was that really about? Because it was kind of broad, but was that like a occasional thing, or what was that exactly?
It's a one-off, right? I mean, everyone uses celebrity branding to elevate their own brand, right? So when I was with Kiyosaki, I had paid for a booth at some expo, but when he invited the guys who had breakout rooms onto the stage, he talked to me the most because I had a really great topic about real estate. So we talked for less than 30 seconds. But because of what he said on stage, when I went to my breakout room, there's all these people outside the door. I'm like, how come they haven't opened the doors up yet? And as I go around the corner, the doors were opened. It was standing room only. Like a third of the people from the
Wow.
conference were like wanting to hear me speak because of what he said, not because of me. And because of that, we had like 500 people in this breakout room. It was my very first time where I was doing a large public speaking event where I had to sell from the stage. I'd never sold from the stage before. I just loved talking and communicating, but selling my program, I didn't want to do that. And it was evident in the fact that 500 people in the first 50 minutes were glued to their seats, taking notes, doing great. As soon as I started talking about my program, my energy dropped. I got nervous, and people started getting up and leaving. And when I'm all done with my pitch, there's like 20 people in the room. And it's depressing to be speaker and have people stand up during your talk and leave. So it was kind of sad at that point. But 24 hours later, when I booked, $30,000 worth of, coaching, it was okay.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, because I saw that you were the keynote speaker for obviously several topics on LinkedIn. I saw. I'm curious, how trained are you with public speaking? Because I know you were from college. It says BS in like speech, which is kind of unique.
Yeah,
I didn't really. I'd love to learn more about that. What that really is about. Like it's like radio, speech, something like that. So I'm just curious to hear about.
Nothing happened in college. I was all behind the scenes in college. What really happened was, as a young man, I was the nerd. I was the second to last kid picked in every single gym class for athletics because I just sucked. And I was shy and timid and kind of a dork, right? I was a geek. But my sophomore year in high school, they have these events coming on, and there was about 12 to 1,300 kids in our whole high school, and a company called Junior Achievement came in to speak. Hey, we're going to have this thing about starting your own business as a high school kid, and come on and join us. And like nobody did it. Like in my entire class of 354 people, only one person stood up and said, I want to spend one night every week and go learn how to do a business. That was me. So I joined Junior Achievement as a high school kid. And one of the perks of that was taking the Dale Carnegie course in human relations and public speaking. And the dorky, awkward kid became class president, homecoming king, everything within like 2 years. So I learned to love and appreciate speaking from the stage. It's why actors do. I mean, they're extreme, right? Because they're like, changing the personality of their characters. I'm just being myself, enjoying, but I love communicating and speaking from the stage. It's a real thrill. I was kind of good at it, but I wasn't always good at it. I had to learn it in high school. The degree in speech was all, radio and television and film training. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what did you really want to do as your passion going into college compared to what you do now? Like, because I see so many stories where it's people changing their majors, but then even if they stick with a major, I at least from what I see, a lot of people deviate from that as they get older. So I'm just curious, what was your really passion after high school and all that?
It's more true now than it was back in the 80s, but I'll tell you this. In high school, I had a Super 8 camera. You know what a film camera is? Where they actually had like film going through it. It's like the movie Super 8, right? You know the movie?
Yes.
That was in the 70s, right? That was me. That was when I watched that movie, like, oh my God, Spielberg was spying on me in Ohio. We had a Super 8 camera. We're doing these scenes. We, did James Bond reenactments with cars and dummies. It was crazy. So I loved the idea of making movies. And I go to college at Northwestern and studied radio, television, and film, and studied that craft for 4 years. And when I got out, I'm like, wow, okay, I'm in Ohio. I took one trip to California for a week, and no disrespect to any of your listeners from California, but it wasn't me. I just didn't feel the vibe. Right? It's a much different vibe than the Midwest. So I stayed in the Midwest. I worked at ABC in Cleveland for a year or less, and I worked at a TV station. And, it was okay. I loved the media. I loved, as you found out, audio, video, all the technical side.
Mm-hmm.
But a guy came in one day for an interview for the morning show there. His name was Robert Allen. Robert Allen wrote No Money Down, and he's a big real estate guy and internet marketing before it was cool.
Okay.
After his interview, I went up to him and said, "Hey, Mr. Allen, this is a really cool thing. How do you get involved with this real estate stuff, education?" "Oh, come to my webinar or my seminar this weekend. It's this is back in the 80s. It's $5,000 for 2 days." I'm like, "Man, I make $3.10 an hour here. I can't do that." And to his credit, he says, "Well, just go to the library and check out my book then." He's like, "Hey, take care of the kids." So I went to the library, got through half of his book, No Money Down, and then went to the bookstore and bought it. Hardcover book, $12.50. It took me a year to go through the book and get nervous about it, but I finally started buying real estate. And I bought, over 100 houses and apartments and things like that. It was a lot of fun.
Wow. Okay.
So,
go ahead. Yeah, that's great. I would have to think that just starting that is probably one of the hardest steps is actually just get starting, like buying the first house and all of that, because I mean, you're a beginner and everything, right? Like,
Millen, I was actually a waiter. I was making, $2 an hour salary plus tips as a waiter. But I read his book, No Money Down. I don't need money to buy a property. I can buy something. And if any of your listeners are in Chicago, they'll appreciate the story. I'm like, all right, great. I'm going to go ahead and just practice making offers on real estate. And I made an offer on this 4-unit building for like $80,000 at the time. And like, wow. And they accepted it. And I'm like, now what do I do? I got to go find a bank financing and down payment. So I'm like, I'm going to practice getting out of the deal. So I wrote a letter and used my legal thing to get out of this deal for $80,000. And I waited a few more months, started learning more and practicing. Like, I can buy this other one, cheaper property, not in Chicago, in a suburb, for $66,000. And I bought it with a lease option where I actually leased the entire building for a year, managed it, and then took the lease payments that I made, used it towards a down payment, so it was no money down. So it sounds like a good deal because I bought it for 66, sold it for, I don't know, 80 something. Make some money along the time for the 18 months that I held it. Learned a lot. So it looked like a good deal. Like, hey, 66 sold for 80 something, and you did all right for your first property. But then I went back years later, and I went and saw the property that I turned down for $80,000 in Chicago in the 80s. You know where that property was? A little suburb called Lincoln Park.
Wow.
That property 5 years later, double, maybe triple. I'm sure it's, easily close to $1 million now in Lincoln Park. It's gorgeous. So, well, I thought it was really cool making, what it was, 18 grand. It would have been cooler to make like $500,000. But part of the education process, right? So, yeah.
Right. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's something. So as far as real estate, because I know my mother is a realtor, but
nice.
So as far as you buying houses and all that, would you do something where you would buy it and then maybe flip it and sell for more, or is it more so you purchase a complex and like rent it out to a lot of people, or is it a combination of everything?
Great question. That's a great question. There's a lot of strategies out there to engage in the real estate investment industry, and I'm a creative entrepreneur, so I did almost all of them. I bought and held. I bought and flipped. I wholesaled. I sold and bought. I did apartment buildings. I did condo conversions. I did an office building. I bought a whole subdivision off of eBay one year, 16 houses. Wow. So a lot of things are available in real estate. What I've always told myself, and when I taught my students when I had a school on this, was that deals are not found, they are created. So the most important thing is the seller's motivation. If the seller's motivated and they're open-minded, you can create a deal which both people can live with. And that's what I focused on. So sometimes I bought and held, sometimes I flipped, sometimes I rehabbed. I learned a lot about that. And when there was a dip in the real estate market in 1990 something, I forget when it was, I didn't have anything to buy or sell. I just rehabbed for like 3 years. I turned into a contractor, which was fun. I got a lot of cool tools and didn't make any money, but it was fun. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to make money in real estate. It's all just limited by your creativity.
Okay. So is rehab? What is that exactly? I don't really understand what that is.
Rehabilitation. You take a beat up house and you put a clean coat of paint on it and rehab it. People, there's a lot of pitfalls with rehabbing, man. I've seen people that put way too much money in their property and sometimes not enough, or buy the wrong property. You've got to really know your costs. You've got to know what your property's worth, all fixed up. And I did one deal, which I was very proud of, where I was a 3-bedroom condo in Chicago on the south side. And I had a contract on it. I said, I'll pay $100,000 for this condo. And I knew that completely rehab. It was built in like the turn of the century. There were like gas lamps in the wall, not even electricity. It was beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah. I knew it'd be worth about $250,000 fixed up, but it would require an easy $40,000, $50,000 in everything. Windows, floors, appliances, everything. It would need a lot of money. So I could, buy for 100, put 50 into it, make another 100. That was the plan. But I started thinking to myself, because I've rehabbed a few houses at that point, I'm like, that's a lot of work. It's gonna take 6 months, and I gotta sell it, then I gotta buy it and all that stuff. Maybe I'll just flip it. And most people try to flip up saying, here's a property, you want to buy it. What I did was this time, this is much more difficult then than it is today. But I took interior pictures of the entire property and did photorealistic rehab, where I did a before and after picture like it already been updated. New floors, new appliances, new cabinets, everything digitally. And the digital resolution was so good, it looked real. Then I got 3 quotes from contractors, got the condo documents, packaged it all into a nice portfolio, and said, you want to wholesale this property? And I gave it to a guy. He had it on his desk at work. And some guy walked by and said, wow, nice rehab. He goes, hasn't been rehabbed yet. Those are just the the imaging for future. He goes, oh, I'd like to look at that. And I sold it, technically sight unseen. I made $20,000 on a piece of paper. I didn't touch it. And that was the lesson I learned, is like I could make $20,000 in a week or a month, whatever it took, or maybe 100 in a year. Now, a lot of people get greedy. 100 is a lot more than 10 or 20, Doug. But yes, but speed has value as well. And if I could do that 5 times a year, it's the same number.
Right.
Yeah.
Really being efficient with your time and I guess
aggravation, man. I mean, once you start rehabbing properties, you take one wall out, there's always something behind it every single time.
Right. That kind of reminds me of course, I'm sure you're familiar with HGTV and all the shows they have.
Yeah, sure.
I love, like, one of my favorites is Love It or List It, where they have the one guy try to have the person buy the house and the one remodels it. But it's very cool seeing. I don't know if it's the same show, but they have like the digital, like you said. Of course, now they do it much more, sophisticated and everything. Like, this is what it will look like, and in your head, you're like, I can't believe this junk's gonna look like that. It's unbelievable.
Back in the 90s when I did this is the internet wasn't even out yet. This is a way. So getting someone to digitally photorealistic imaging images, it cost me like $100 a photo. Nowadays you can do it on Fiverr for $5. But yeah, and the quality, I'm sure, is like 100 times better now. But yeah, that was the biggest thing that I learned, is that a lot of people don't have the vision of what can be. All they see is what's in front of them. And as an entrepreneur, as an investor, it's imperative to have the vision of the future.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious, because real estate is one of those topics where it's something that's never really taught in.
Right.
I would say any high school, college, or not. At least, I mean, I'm not in a business class, but I never really hear my friends that are in majoring business. It's never really talked about. So I'm curious, what do you believe is one of the most like misunderstood maybe concepts or preconceptions that people have about real estate when they first like when you maybe in your shoes, when you were young, at that age, when you were first reading Money Down. Yeah, something like that.
The biggest misconception is people think real estate always goes up.
Okay.
And that's when I went through. I had several $1 million of real estate, and one day in 2008 it all went down, right? So I know that's not true, But at that time, in your lifespan, in my lifespan, at that point, in my 40s, like real estate had always gone up. So it's a very safe investment. It's leveraged. It's tangible. It's not subject to the whims of the economy that much or ecosystems. It's a very tried and true anchor for the economy. Real estate's a benchmark for our economy. But because of that, people think, oh, it's a solid investment, provided you buy it right. So I learned my lesson pretty early on. I never lost money on real estate, maybe one deal. But over the, close to 100 properties I purchased, my general rule of thumb was to always make money when I bought, not when I sold. Now, here's what I mean by that. You don't really make the money, but you understand that the value is inside the deal, not waiting for appreciation. I ran across people that buying properties in Arizona and Florida, these hot markets, saying, oh, yeah, it's been going up 10% a year here. I'm going to buy now and flip it in 2 years and, make all this money on a leveraged deal because a 20% increase on a $100,000 property, 20 grand, you might only have $5,000 down, but, 400% return. So I saw people do that until it didn't work. So I learned, you know what? I'm not going to depend on appreciation. I'm going to keep that as my icing on the cake. My foundation will be I create the value either by buying low or updating the value physically. There's a lot of things you can do with, zoning and construction and all that jazz. So I create the value, and then appreciation is just a bonus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Wow. So I didn't hear you mention that you had some. You mentioned I forget the gentleman, No Money Down, the author.
Robert Allen. Yeah, great guy.
Robert Down.
Robert Allen's his name.
Allen. Okay, Robert Allen. So did you have a specific, I guess, mentor or someone that was guiding you with your first purchase and like first getting started, or was it more so like I'm gonna start practicing this skill set and just see where things go?
Dude, one of the benefits of youth is inexperience. And the biggest benefit of youth is you're not beat up. You haven't experienced a lot of loss as a young man, right? I'm 26 years old. I'm like, I can buy this property. Robert Allen says so in a book. So I made these stupid, crazy offers and a couple got accepted. But if I had been a 30 or 40-year-old, I'm like, oh, no one's going to accept that. I've been rejected too many times. That'll never work. All this crust gets built on us over time. And people who are not entrepreneurs, they never get out of it. Entrepreneurs often get beat up and their positivity will bring them back to, abundance. But as a young guy, yeah, this is going to work. I don't have I'm not tainted. As I got older, yeah, I had some, setbacks in my life, but I think that there's one thing I learned is anybody can invest in real estate if they're open-minded and creative and, don't depend on one deal. Don't fall in love with the deal, fall in love with the industry. Yeah.
Okay. All right, I guess let's shift to something a little bit different. So this is
my current business.
Yeah, sure. I guess we can go there. Yeah.
Up to you.
So basically, what would you say is your current business right now? Because I saw it's Author Your Brand. That's
Author Your Brand? That's it. Yes. Yeah. We create books for clients who understand the value of being a best-selling author, but do not have the time or skill to write it themselves. So we write the book, we publish it, we make them bestsellers, we put them in the media, put them on podcasts, radio, TV, get them to become what I call slightly famous in their industry, so they can sell more of their coaching, consulting, and their business stuff.
Yeah, I mean, anytime anyone sees a best-selling author, that catches anyone's eye automatically. So yeah, obviously, the idea of ghostwriting I think is really fascinating because it's something that I feel like most people don't really would look into, like Robert Kiyosaki. That's it. Yeah, Robert Kiyosaki's book. All these people, like, I would never assume that someone else did the writing portion of the majority of those books.
That's why they call it ghostwriting, because you don't know.
Right.
Laurel Langmeyer was very, very clear on my radio show. She said, "Oh no, I'm not a writer. I did not write this book. I hired someone." It's her words. It's her strategies, her tactics. Everything's in there is hers.
Right,
She
right,
never touched the computer.
right. So I'm just curious. I guess like this art of ghostwriting,
Yeah.
because it's very. I just think it's kind of like almost like a secret weapon, because it's basically putting your blueprint and your strategies to make it tangible for anybody to purchase, but at the same time you're not putting your own things on hold to do it. Like, cause putting all your time into it.
Here's the thing about especially books. It's one thing to hire someone to write articles or blog posts for you because that's a little bit easier to do. But you got to keep someone's attention for several hours in a book. Even movies can't do that for 4 to 6 hours, right? It's like after 2 hours, I'm done. So to keep someone's attention in a book requires a very high level of skill in storytelling and creating what we call open loops, where you don't, cliffhangers, not just at the cliffhanger at the ending, but like sprinkled throughout. Game of Thrones did a cliffhanger at the end of every single episode. Our own news channels put a cliffhanger before a commercial break. Soap operas were built on cliffhangers. In books, well-written books, drop those little breadcrumbs all throughout the book. And most writers I know, they don't do it. The skilled ghostwriters know that the content is secondary to the context. You really have to understand that someone's going to read this. And if you don't hold their attention and make it a page turner, you're going to lose them. There's some stats out there on this, Millen, that 54% of books that are purchased are never opened. People just buy the cover, they don't bother opening it. Of those that are open, half are never finished. So you got a 1 in 4 shot of someone reading your book. The point is that if you're not good at storytelling and making a compelling nonfiction page turner, your message won't get read.
Right. Even doesn't matter how good it is, too.
Right.
So, and I think that's what's really fascinating, because even you stated that's why it's so important for journalists to ask the author questions that they didn't think themselves, because you might believe, oh, these are great skills that anyone can make money off of and everything like that. But then that person might be like, all right, I read the first 35 pages. I feel like I have a broad knowledge, which is obviously never a good thing to think that way.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I'm just curious because you mentioned that you produced blockbuster Hollywood movies. I saw
my
that.
friends did. My friends. Yeah. I graduated from Northwestern in TV and film, and my roommate and my friends have done movies you've heard of, like Failure Launch, the DreamWorks Home. My good friend out there produced Pretty Woman, Gary Goldstein, and so I have friends in the industry, but I went out there for a very short time. Like, I don't want to be in that industry.
Right.
But I'm still friends with a bunch of them. We have jokes, and I have a couple friends from college, or we got in front of the camera. Julie Louise-Dreyfus from Seinfeld lived across the hall from me at school, and Dermot Mulroney was a friend of mine. So there's a bunch of people that made it big and on screen, but most of my friends are behind the camera.
Yes, that's one of my favorite shows, Seinfeld.
I
love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So one thing I guess I'd ask, because I saw that you were an accomplished writer for several different publications, pretty well known, Yahoo Finance, all these things. How do you believe? Well, not believe, but I guess how did that really help you in the next step? Because obviously, from what I've read and learned, you were in the real estate industry and then speaker. So how did writing really help you and go to that next step in your career?
Yeah, it's funny. It's people have said this. I'm not the first one to say that, but if I had to develop any skill as a college kid or right post college, it's speaking and writing. Because no matter what you do, science, technology, medicine, law, manufacturing, you got to talk with people. So the better speaker you are, great. The better writer you are, also great. So I love writing, but I have better writers than me on staff. After, in the real estate world, I didn't have to write anything. I roll contracts up and I'd review leases. Marketing wise, though, I had to sell I had an academy where I taught investors how to invest in real estate. So I had to sell that. And then when the real estate market crashed and Doug crashed, and I got into writing books. I loved it. I loved writing, and so I knew that PR was a powerful part of that. So I got some credentials, and I started writing for local, right? I mean, nothing big. It didn't, but some things got picked up. Syndication is weird in PR, so I would write article for Fox Reno, and it got picked up or syndicated on Yahoo Finance or Bloomberg or something. So over time, I had several hundred news stories or press releases get published in a bunch of digital news outlets. A couple months ago, I got my credentials to write for entrepreneur.com. So I've written just a few articles there. That's every month I'll put 2 or 3 out there. It's a lot of fun. And Thrive Global and a couple other ones. And what that does, it does the same thing it does for anybody in any industry. And it's called celebrity branding. The reason we buy crap on Instagram from an influencer is because, oh, well, if Rihanna's using us, I'll get it. Or, so if Doug's writing for an entrepreneur, they trust him, I guess I can trust him. It's the same darn thing.
Right.
So you have your own news station. You got to use what's called earned media. I got to earn my right to publish on somebody else's platform. And the bigger the platform, more popular or respected the platform, there goes my elevation of my status as well. So doing a press release is no big deal. Getting my news story picked up by Bloomberg was a thrill when it first happened. Writing for Entrepreneur, I'm just grateful. It's so much fun. So the more you do that and the more you get out there, you're contributing, your writing improves, and you're more respected.
Yeah, obviously that definitely makes sense. Just because that's what I try to do. Well, that's what I'm learning about. I'm a communication major right now, strategic communication and psychology. And in my classes, obviously, digital marketing's obviously skyrocketing every second. Yeah. Every second. Yeah. In the one class, I do a project, and basically almost every brand you look at, there's going to be some influencer wearing the shoes or talking about it, and then we have to make our own product, and we're like, all right, we'll have celebrity A and celebrity B. Use this shaving product and all this.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense.
And here's a big difference for you on that. I'm studying. I keep studying stuff myself. 2 or 3 hours a day, I'm reading books on marketing, branding, and the ecosystem of business, really. And the one thing that's funny about that is that today's influencers are not. They're promoters. Because if you're gonna actually influence something, you're not influencing an action, you're influencing a habit. Apple's an influencer, right. I love my iPhone, right? That influenced me to go iPhone. But if I'm on Instagram and I see a cool product promoted by one of my celebrities that I respect or like, that's just promotion, man. They call those influencers, that's fine. But I'm gonna be a little bit of an old stick in the mud here and go, maybe.
Yeah, it makes sense, because even I see one of my someone I follow, he like a professional swimmer, like in a commercial for an ad, and I know he's not drinking that because he's a professional athlete, so right. It's definitely 100% promotion, because I know, like, as an athlete myself, like, they're definitely not drinking that in the prepared for the Olympics or whatever. So so that makes a lot of sense.
It's funny.
Yeah. Jeez, that's interesting. Let's see. Oh, all right. This is one thing I want to kind of talk about a little bit. Yeah, sure. So obviously this is kind of a little bit of I guess a buzzword for me, because I'm not too familiar. But like, what's the largest infomercial network mean exactly?
A friend of mine owned a network of infomercials, right, where he actually would produce them and use them, and he buy a lot of dead airtime around the country. And it's weird, because you think, like, when you're looking on the TV, you're like flipping through these things, right? A lot of people don't. A lot of people watch these, QVC and these long commercials that are like a half an hour long. And so my friend Kent started doing those, and he built a network of stations around the country that had, promote all their dead time at 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. on a Sunday. So run them, because all there is revenue. And he had really low cost, so he's able to go pretty big on it.
Right. So would he? sell certain products exactly? Is that what
Yeah,
that's
you know,
what
the
that is? Is anything
ShamWow, the Snuggie, all those things. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That's kind of fun, I guess. Interesting.
Well, it was interesting to watch. I actually lived with him for a year out there in California when he was doing it. I'm like, that's kind of cool stuff. But yeah, I have, if you're looking for some stories, man, I got plenty of stories on my flying around the world in my little airplane, and
Oh, yeah.
some of the authors that I've worked with. I got some
Yeah.
clients that has a crazy story. So you can ask me anything you want, and
Yeah.
I'll.
Well, that definitely slipped my head because you were because you're trained as a private pilot. Is that
Mhm.
correct? Okay.
Yeah.
So, because obviously do you still fly right now, or is that with in the
No,
past?
I had an airplane until the recession. Then I gave her up for that.
Right. Okay. Because I did see that. I didn't want to. All right.
Nah,
Okay.
I'm pretty transparent. It's not I don't hide anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. So basically, once you got everything's going well, like real estate and things. So what really, I guess, motivated you to get a plane? And well, not only get the plane, but I guess like actually fly it, because of course people that are well off have a plane, but actually you yourself flying it. I'm just
Yeah.
curious, like, was that just a challenge you wanted to kind of do, or is that something you dreamed of?
I've
But
always wanted to fly. My dad was a pilot, and so he was a pilot in the war. I'm like, I want to be a pilot too. It's a cool. Come on. I mean, you get chicks being a pilot, right? So, yeah. So I wanted to fly, and when I was, let's see, must have been 25, 26, bartending and working at a hospital, in the AV department. I was working two jobs, and I'm like, I have some extra money. I'm gonna go get my pilot's license. So I went and started taking lessons and learned to fly, and it's awesome. I mean, it's how when you sometimes in your dreams you're flying, it's just like that. It's so much fun. I'm a scuba diver, so it's very similar to scuba diving, but you're in there. So I've been
Right.
flying, yeah, since I was in my 20s, and then but it comes in spurts. The money comes in, I fly for a while, buy an airplane, and then business up and down, maybe not for a little while.
Hmm.
But I've always wanted to do it. My dad's a pilot, my brother's a pilot, and it was just as a kid growing up, when you're going in dad's plane somewhere, it kind of sticks with you. So he had a little single engine, nothing fancy, but we went around to Ohio to Wisconsin and whatnot. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, I had a plane for 3 years. I got to fly it all over the country and Caribbean and down near Central America. It was fun.
Awesome. Yeah. Please. I'd love to hear. You said a story from a client. You said, or was that you? This is
Yeah,
from
I
back.
got my clients are way more interesting than me. Uh,
Something you think is interesting that you think you'd like to share. Well, of course, they're all interesting, but something you think like
they are.
your
I
head,
mean,
whatever you.
I tell people we've done like a couple hundred books for athletes, politicians, criminals. Sometimes it's the same thing, but mostly they're business leaders.
Mhm.
And some of them have the most amazing journeys. I'm working with some veterans right now who've been in battle. One of my
Wow.
clients is a rocket scientist,
Okay. Jeez.
15 patents. He's got a little patent you've heard of. It's a thing called GPS. One of my
Really?
clients, one of my clients worked at NASA and invented GPS with his team of 5 people. Yeah.
Jeez. That's pretty awesome.
So interviewing him is like going back in time. He's like, "Oh yeah, I remember when I met Bobby Kennedy." I'm like, "You met Bobby?" "Oh yeah, I met him." And the Prime Minister of India and stuff. He's like Forrest Gump with like, you know,
Yeah.
graduated college at 14. He's a smart guy. So just interviewing these people is fascinating. You know, I met a guy who ran the largest point shaving scandal in U.S. history. He
Wow.
he scammed the NCAA, college games for millions by, making one of the players, not miss a shot, but not make as many shots as he normally. It's a fascinating story. He did time for it, right? So he went to jail.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I met one of my clients. His book is not out, but he had a real life. It's almost exact same scenario as the Shawshank Redemption.
Oh.
It's
Okay.
incredible story. So that's the one thing I love about my business and what we do. I've got another journalist, but I'm lucky enough to interview a lot of my clients for their books, and I love hearing what they did, what they've done, where they want to go in life, and most importantly, how they want to impact the world. my business coach he listened in on some of my calls last year. And he listened to one call and said, wow, you're really excited about talking to this one guy. I'm like, yeah, it was a really cool idea. The second call I heard, you weren't that excited. You were not rude or anything, but you're kind of flat. Oh, yeah, I just want to make money with this book. I'm like, I'm sort of bored. He said, why do you talk to him? I'm in business. I want more business. He said, well, if you don't talk to people you don't want to work with, I bet your business will go up. What? Yeah. I want you to start talking to half as many people and watch your business increase. I said, well, I'm paying you money every month to coach me. I guess I'll do what you say. From 2019 to 2020 into the pandemic, right? Business went up 300%. Yeah.
Wow.
So our company does books for people, right? We help people get their message or story out, but we only work with people who have a message and a passion to make a difference in the world. I'm not super left or anything. That's not anything to do with politics. It's about making a difference in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a lot of fun for us. And if you don't mind, I'd like to share one thing for your listeners. But there's a lot of people don't know if their idea is any good, or if the story is valuable enough, or people will resonate with it. There's a lot of mystery behind this book creation process. So I fixed it. I said, what if you could actually start your book with a knowledge documented that people want to read it? Guaranteed sales. Well, that'd be great. Okay. Well, let's just take a page from Procter and Gamble before they roll out a new shampoo or a new whatever it is. They do a focus group. But authors don't think about this. Our company creates 6 independent book covers. We do a survey, an actual data dump of 100 other books in Amazon in the same category, and analyze every single 3-star review in their category. Not 1 star, people just pissed off, and 5 stars, somebody's mom. But a 3-star, somebody's like read the book, has something constructive to offer. So we capture all those, catalog, collate, and give our clients a complete rundown on their category, what readers want, what they don't want, and feedback on their book idea. And once they do this, it takes about a month or so, they're good to go. They know their idea is going to work. Or if they don't, then change it.
Yeah, it's funny. It sounds so simple, but it makes such a big difference. Like focus group survey.
Yeah, and that's what I want to offer people. If any of your listeners go to go.realbestseller.com, we do that for you. We'll hop on the phone, go through your idea, and do some analysis for you to give you this idea. So it's go.realbestseller.com, and it's not like a cheat sheet. You actually, fill something out and get on the phone with me, and we go through it. It's kind of fun.
Right. Yeah, great. So basically, all right. So it's great to hear about things you did in the air, but I guess underwater. I guess the air is not enough. You gotta go underwater too, submerged, right?
Yeah, right? I've scuba dived in many of the oceans, mainly Caribbean, Antarctica.
Wow. Okay.
I didn't scuba there. I just did the polar plunge, but man, that was painful. But yeah, the Caribbean is my favorite place to go. I've been to Australia to Great Barrier Reef. So it's been fun. Nothing real harrowing there. I mean, there was one, there's no death-defying feats in scuba. I mean, the airplane, I had some close calls, but not scuba diving. I saw somebody almost get in trouble in scuba diving, and I played pranks on my diver friends when we're swimming around, and we see a bunch of like 5-6 foot barracudas, and they're like 20, 30 yards away. But I go out to my dive buddy, and I take my fingers and I like pinch his ankle a little bit because he thinks it's up shit. But that's
nice.
I like having fun.
Yeah. So how I'm not too familiar with diving, so I'm just curious. Or scuba diving. I'm just curious, like how long does you and your team like stay underwater for? Or like
it depends how deep you go. The deeper you go, the less you can stay down because the volume of the air actually decreases with pressure. So if I'm at 30, 40 feet, I'm good for an hour or so. If I go down to like 100 feet or 110 feet, like I did at the Blue Hole in Belize, it's like 12 minutes. You don't have much time because you use a lot more air because the volume is less.
Right.
And the worst part is on your way back up, you have to stop and wait. Because if you don't, you may have heard of a thing called the bends, right? It's called nitrogen. It's really bad because the nitrogen bubbles are in your bloodstream, and it's the most painful thing in the world. So you got to do these things called safety stops to let the nitrogen out of your body as you exhale, and then slowly. So you're down at the bottom at 100 feet for 12 minutes, and your safety stops are like half an hour. That's kind of boring, but
Yeah.
it's important to be safe, of course.
Yeah, definitely. And so, so would you say what's like something really exciting you'd say with scuba diving? Because obviously you're doing it all. You're putting yourself through all this. I guess all this gear on and like heavy gear and everything. What's like what would be the point of it? Like what makes it really exciting? Like seeing something that most people don't see at all.
Yeah. For me, it's actually communing with nature at a pretty high level. When you're scuba diving, I mean, you're not walking in the woods. We can all walk in the woods. But to go underwater for an extended period of time, you got to be a fish. And scuba is, scuba stands for self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. It's the only way you can do that for extended periods of time. And so you're in this environment, and a lot of people look for the big fish. I've swam with sharks before and seen big manta rays. That's all cool. But I love seeing the little things. There's so many little things you would never see, except maybe in an aquarium. And being out in the wild, underwater, it's, I grew up, watching, it was before cable, right? I was watching Jacques Cousteau on television, and it's still a very raw and undiscovered place, the ocean. There's a lot of mystery there still. We know a lot about the flora and fauna, but when I go down, I'm like, wow, this is, especially when you go in caves or grottos or a thing called a continental shelf. You go on the wall, and there's one time we're in, I think it was in Cancun, and we're swimming along like 40, 50 feet, and then you come to this edge of this cliff, and the water is so clear, it feels like you're gonna fall, but you're underwater, you're floating, but it just drops off to like a mile down. It goes down to blackness. Like, I'm in the water.
Right.
It's freaky for a second, but yeah, it's probably just, it's just beautiful. You're floating. There's no cell phone, no email. You're just in nature.
Right. And even if you have your phone off, you don't have to worry about that underwater anyway.
No.
So that's great. Yeah. That's something that's really interesting point you bring up with that, because even I would argue if the typical walk in the woods or on the trail or whatever, because I do running as a sport, so I know, and even I've had my phone with music on too, but like anybody that's walking, most people either talking to somebody on the phone or calling somebody or messaging, headphones, the list goes on. And I guess getting that break, they won't get that break from that external stimuli at all.
That's what I do when I'm flying too. When I'm flying, there's no email or cell phone up there either. You're just you and the aircraft and the weather. So I guess I'm more comfortable, underwater or in the clouds than I am on ground. Yeah.
Right. And this is something that's interesting. You said you're a magician, right?
Yes.
How did you get into that with everything else? Is this just like a little hobby of yours, or
yeah? When I was like 13 years old, I got a book about Harry Houdini, and so I was fascinated with that. I learned how to be an escape artist first. You can like tie me up, handcuff me, and I can pretty much escape on it most of the time, maybe all the time. I don't know, but I learned how to be an escape artist first, which is cool. I had my family tie me up, and I would always get out of it. Could never tie me down. I learned how to pick locks. I took a locksmithing course, so I learned how to pick locks.
Okay.
So it was just a fascinating book a kid read and started doing it. But you can't make money as an escape artist, really, unless you're like David Blaine, right? So I'm just, a kid in high school. So I learned to do regular magic, and it got me on stage. Like we talked before about being out there, and it got my confidence up by speaking. And it was a lot of fun. I do kids parties. I didn't do balloons, but I did magic shows for kids parties, and it was just fun. It's been several years since I've done anything, but I can still do a card trick or two, and I've got some equipment in my closet. I can always pull it if I get the call.
Yeah, that's I, the thing you mentioned from putting yourself out there like that, I mean, it's crazy the transformation that someone can have from let's say you were saying you were like a nerd geek guy. Nothing wrong with being a nerd, but I'm just saying, not with the nerd part, but just like closed off and all this to
Yeah.
like being a speaker and everything like that. Like it's amazing how if someone really wants to change that, they can make that change.
They can, and I'd love to be the self-development person. Like anybody could change anytime. Like, well, yeah, but it's much easier when you're younger. It's much easier when you're younger when you can kind of set yourself up, or if you move to a new town, you can start brand new. But if you got existing friends and experiences in your life, change is super hard. We're not designed for change. We rebel against it in every cell of our being.
Right.
So to desire to do that has to be, beyond motivation. It has to be something you really, aren't going to do without. And in my case, I just love, reading stuff and doing things and just kind of evolved. The Dale Carnegie course turned me from wallflower to, BMOC, but that was it for me. And you know what? It's weird because we had kids in our class. We had like a disabled kid in the class. I mean, he would cerebral palsy. Couldn't even hear him speak very well. But he's taking a speaking class with us, So I could never recommend enough the classes available. It's an older thing, right? Developed back in the 50s and 60s. But man, the fundamentals. Second most popular book in the world is How to Win Friends and Influence People.
It's funny you said that. I was just about to get into that because when I was much more closed off in high school as well, like a really close friend of mine, he said, "Nolan, you should read this book."
Yep.
And I was like, I was like, yeah, I mean, at least I don't have to get in front of a stage to read a book. So I was like, all right, sure, I'll read a book. so I read the book. I mean, like you said, very simple things, but like when you actually read it, look at it, implement it, it makes a difference.
Right.
It makes a difference. And and then having those people to push you too. Like he helped me push me, through different experiences. I'd go to a dance, go to prom, like ask someone to go with me. Like these things that as a person when I was really young, I would never do. But now, I mean, it's amazing because it's not just in that moment. You it's kind of like you build yourself up almost incrementally like that, which is really powerful.
Yeah, it is. The desire to change and improve yourself is one thing, but to change your personality or who you are, that's huge. I'm not sure if it was intentional or just happened, man. I couldn't answer that.
It's. I think I agree with you when you say it's difficult to do when you're older. I would say. I mean, I'm not an old person, but I could see how it could be hard because younger people, we have a lot. At least I feel like I have a lot more energy and more room for error, all that stuff. Like I spoke to someone I spoke to someone recently on the show, and she was even telling me too. As a young person, like you have much more. It's better to make mistakes, learn from it, move forward, and things like that.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. Fail faster. Yeah.
But I think this is a good place to conclude.
All right. Sounds great.
Thank you so much, Doug Crowe, for coming on. I really appreciate it, taking the time. This is a fun talk.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right.